116 people and 8 Americans have summited Everest without supplemental oxygen, it's going to be 10 times harder than it was last year. So I will be pushing those limits. And there's limits on what our body can do for sure.
Sure.
However, attitude matters, positivity matters. To me, failure is the building block for success.
Welcome back to another episode of Built to Finish. Today's conversation is about something every founder, athlete, and leader eventually faces: the moment when motivation runs out and only grit remains. My guest is the author of Grit It Done. He has spent years studying and living this concept. He breaks down what separates people who say they want something from those who actually follow through when it gets hard. We're going to explore what grit really looks like under pressure and how to build it when you need it most. Coming to us from Mount Everest Base Camp, Reid Tileston. Welcome to the show.
Awesome, Steve. I'm so happy to be here and thank you for inviting me. I always feel in awe of you given all the Ironman that you have finished. It is just absolutely epic. So I'm honored to be here and have the conversation.
Thank you so much. And I am in awe of you right now because you and I met this time last year on Mount Everest. We were part of a summit expedition on the north side going through Tibet and the China route. And now you're back there again. You summited last year and now you're back there again.
Yeah. My mentality in life is good, better, best. I think that attempting to summit Everest is good. I think that summiting it is better. And I think that doing it without supplemental oxygen is best. I believe that everybody should strive to be among the best at whatever they do. And I'm here trying it with no supplemental oxygen because I lead by example, and I am like an absolute kid in the candy shop at this moment.
Amazing. Good, better, best. I love that. And I can't wait to hear what you're going to be up to after you've accomplished this, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Let's talk about grit and your specific subject matter expertise.
Yeah, the bottom line with grit is that, to me, what grit means is doing difficult things at the exact moment that you do not want to do them. If you take the suffering now, there is so much upside to how your life can get better afterwards. And is it easy or enjoyable to do difficult things in the moment, to suffer in the moment? Absolutely not. But I think that I've gotten to the point in my life where I know that if I do suffer, it's going to lead to great stuff in the future. So I am always happy to do it. Now, one thing that I've researched academically, and just one question that people ask me is, how do you get grit, right? Like what
Hmm.
really drives individuals to achieve, to have efficacy, right? And to me, it's simple. The things that motivate me are just people and relationships. Everything that I've done in my life that is worthwhile, I've been inspired by somebody in my life. And I'll give you an example. I'm a professor at BYU. I teach entrepreneurship through acquisition. So I
Hmm.
teach individuals that want to become first time business buyers. And I'm motivated, Steve, to have the best ever class on entrepreneurship through acquisition and to have the best ever class at BYU. But the only reason I have that motivation is that when I was in business school, I was inspired by two professors that I was a teaching assistant for. They taught me how to be a good teacher, how to be a good leader. And that intrinsic drive is what makes me want to be the best teacher, the best professor that I can be right now. So, what drives the ability to do hard things? It's having people in your life that can inspire you to get out there and level up.
I totally agree. So I love your definition of grit. Where do you think people get it wrong when they're going after the application of grit in their endeavors?
I think people get it wrong in the sense that they surround themselves by the wrong type of people. For example, I recently completed a PhD, the country's first PhD on entrepreneurship through acquisition. And acquiring a business is a really difficult thing to do. Most individuals that set out to do it are not successful. So I
Hmm.
studied the factors that differentiate those that actually acquire versus those that don't. And one necessary condition is being surrounded by people, a peer group that's also searching for a business that can provide you with analytical decision support, can provide you with peer support, can provide you with emotional support in that process. So when people are trying to go out and achieve difficult things, it's critical, Steve, that you surround yourself with the right people in that process, right? So if you want to buy a business, surround yourself with other people looking to buy a business, right? If you want to go climb Mount Everest, surround yourself with other mountaineers, with other endurance athletes, with a good guide company, with a good guide, right? Expand your social network to include people that do that stuff because we are defined by who we surround ourselves with. And it's much easier to achieve things when you're around people that have that same mindset that you do. Now, if we take this one step further, think about your own role, right? You will become like the people that you surround yourself with, and people will become like the individuals that they surround themselves with. So how you
Absolutely.
show up actually dictates how the people around you act, if that makes sense.
I agree. I mean, you are the sum total of the people that you surround yourself with. So if you want to achieve something, there's no better way to increase the odds of success if you're surrounded by people that are trying to achieve the same thing or have already achieved it even better.
Yeah, and you could have a naysayer in your life that's like, "Oh, you want to go, summit Mount Everest? You shouldn't do that." You might just think you can brush that off, but those negative feelings, that negative attitude, that has an impact, whether you want to admit it or whether you want to be in denial about it. So cannot stress that part of it enough. Now, you also have the option to go at things alone, but whether it's buying a business or doing something like summiting Mount Everest, it's just more enjoyable and you have higher levels of efficacy when you're surrounded by people that can be additive in that process.
So how do you deal with people that are pushing back? Let's take Everest as an example, because I went through this and I think many of the folks on our team did as well. We're surrounded by loved ones that obviously want the best for us, and they're saying, no, please don't do this purely out of love, not because they're naysayers, not because they're trying to hold you back, but purely because of all of the dangers surrounding such an expedition. So how do you deal with that type of, I guess, perceived negativity?
Yeah, there's trade-offs in life, right? I've had success in romantic relationships and I've had failure in romantic relationships, right? And certainly doing difficult things can come at a cost. So I think it's important for individuals to have a clear priority on what matters to them, what doesn't matter to them, and make principled, intentional choices around that.
Good advice. Good advice. So, back to grit. Obviously, it takes, grit to push through hard times in the business world. How do you figure out when to continue with the grit versus choosing to pivot? And what's the line that kills a lot of founders in their efforts?
To me, the issue is if you're thoughtful about what you want to do and you have a clear picture of what the end goal is, and you've spent the time, I'm a huge fan of visualization, to visualize like what you want the end goal to be, then the truth is you don't ever quit. Right? You have a high level goal that you're working towards, and there might be various different pathways to get there, and you might have to pivot, right? But I think that having a clear well thought out, intentional goal is of the utmost importance. Now, the research shows that when it comes to goal setting, that having goals that are achievable is the highest probability to lead to actually that leads to efficacy. But let's balance that though against, things that we just see around us, our own lived
Hmm.
experience. I find a lot of inspiration in Elon Musk, right? The guy just does like so much public service, runs companies, right? He just does everything. But
Hmm.
the research says set achievable goals. And of course, I'm a professor, I'm a PhD. Like I understand the research world, at least to an extent. But my belief is that it's important to anchor high. It's important to set unreasonable goals and just don't give up in achieving them, right? There's so much power in just saying, I'm going to get this done. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think. I don't care what the cost is. I'm doing it. When we can come at something with that much focus, that much power, and that much intentionality, it becomes difficult not to achieve it. Now, are there costs to going that way? Yes. Are you going to alienate some people? Yes. Is there a huge opportunity cost? Yes. But it begs the question, like how badly do you want something? What is it?
Hmm.
What is it worth to you? So that's how I fundamentally think about that. And if we go back to Angela Duckworth's work about grit, the seminal author of it, she will
Hmm.
tell you that what are the drivers of grit? It is a combination of passion and it is a combination of perseverance. So I encourage all your listeners to take a moment and say, okay, what do I really have the most amount of energy and passion for? And what am I going to be able to have incessant amounts of perseverance for? I'm at base camp of Mount Everest right now. I'm surrounded by glaciers. Steve, I love glaciers. They are patient and they are persistent, and nothing in the long run gets in their way.
Right. That is so incredibly true. So going back to your comment a couple sentences ago, in terms of like practical advice, what are 2 to 3 daily behaviors that actually build grit over time? Not theory. Well, what can people actually start doing tomorrow?
I think that anybody that has never practiced cold water immersion should unequivocally start their day with some form of cold water immersion, whether it's you're doing it for 2 minutes once a week or, 2 minutes 5 times a week, engage cold water immersion. For those, I mean, I'm sure most of your listeners have already done it, and that's great. But for those that haven't, you are in for just such a game changer for you. So I highly recommend starting with that. In addition, I end my days by listing out, basically ranking how I did for the day on a scale of 1 to 10 and saying I did this thing well, I did this well, I did this well, I should do this differently next time, and here's what I'm focused on for tomorrow. In addition to I also start the day with 3 minutes of visualization for how I either want the day to go or how I want my life to go. So the three things I'd recommend is engage cold water immersion, visualize in the morning, and you can do that in conjunction with meditation. And then at night, check out, rate yourself on how you did, be honest about it, but most importantly, think about what is the one thing that you want to level up tomorrow, right? Go to bed with that thought in your mind.
Hey everyone, just a quick reminder that the Built to Finish podcast is brought to you by Acresis. Acresis have helped over 30 founders generate over $1 billion in wealth via strategic acquisitions or investor recapitalizations. If you're the owner of a middle market company and want to explore what a potential exit will look like for you so that you can finally realize the value of what you've been working so hard on, please do contact Acresis via the website acresis.com or hit me up on LinkedIn for more information at Stephen Pivnik. Now, back to the show. That is excellent, super actionable advice. And quick aside, when we were on Mount Everest last year, you got really sick. I mean, so sick that they had to put you on oxygen and you had to go down to base camp from advanced base camp, right? So from, what was it, from 19,000 feet down to 17,000 feet in order to get better. And while you were recuperating, you actually continued your cold water immersion in a freezing river just about a couple of 100 yards from where base camp was.
Yeah, and the key takeaways of that story is, yeah, I got sick. I got high altitude pulmonary edema at 21,000 feet. Objectively, put in writing so I could never retell the story differently. I was on my deathbed, right? I literally almost died. And I could try to retell that story to be the case, but the physician doctor, wrote that down. But you know what, Steve? I got on oxygen. I went down. And the key to that whole story is like, it was never a question in my mind that I was gonna make it up the mountain. And getting HAPE, high altitude pulmonary edema, just inspired me 20 times more than I was already inspired to get up there and do it. I'm a huge believer from my own lived experience that failure is the fundamental building block for success. And yes, down in base camp at 17,000 feet, there was a great river, so I swam with no wetsuit in water that was, probably 35, 36 degrees in my estimation. And I used that to keep myself mentally sane. And everyone told me, don't do it. It's not going to help with your pulmonary edema. But you know what? I needed the boost. And then I don't know if you know this or not, but I went back up the mountain, of course, summited. And while Adrian Ballinger had a faster time than me, I was the fastest among our group, right? So I recovered. Then after I summited, I actually, at 21,000 feet, also immerse myself in cold water. It was a creek, so I couldn't quite swim, but I fully immersed myself in cold water at 21,000 feet. Then, when I got back over the summer, just it hit me one day to look up what the Guinness Book of World Records was for the highest swim or cold plunge. And it actually turns out that some professional British swimmer, I believe it was 2019, but don't quote me on that, went to 1,300 meters, which is 21,000 feet in the Himalaya, dug a hole in the snow, put water in it, and like swam in place for, 20 or 30 seconds. So believe it or not, I was also at 1,300 meters and I was swimming. So maybe I was a meter lower, maybe I was a meter higher, maybe I was right there, but I probably got close, if not exceeded the Guinness Book of World Records for a cold water swim. Funny enough.
That is insane. So I have so many questions about this last this last segment. So first of all, I didn't know about that cold plunge that you did up high. That is incredible, and I know that you're going to attempt it again when you're at that altitude during this adventure. But I have to say, when I saw witnessed you get sick at Advanced Base Camp, and you were put on oxygen, and then we all as a team came back down to a base camp to further continue our acclimatization, you were in the best spirits possible. Anybody else that would have been in that situation would have been incredibly down. They would have been super sad. They would have been disappointed. They would have been saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me." Here you are sitting with HAPE on oxygen with a smile ear to ear. And I can attest to the fact that your positivity was as high, if not higher, than everybody else's in the group. You knew that you were getting better and you were going to go back up that mountain and get to the top.
Yeah, I was gonna will myself up there no matter what. By the way, super amazing. I don't know if you remember or not, but last year on the mountain, when after I got HAPE, I started when I was going back up, I would flex and I would point at the mountain, and then eventually the Sherpa started to mimic me, and eventually some of our other team members started to mimic me too. So I'd flex and I'd point. Then I got to base camp this year on the south side, and there are some Sherpa that are here that were on our trip on the north side last year, and
Really awesome.
they
Like
didn't know that I was here.
you're
And
having
then
a
so they didn't
reunion.
they yeah, they didn't kn I was walking by a tent and they saw me, and then the first thing they did a year later is they're like, "Hey, Reid," and they flexed and they pointed at the summit. So I was but to your point, yeah, I mean, listen, are there limits to what we can accomplish in the mountains on a physiological standpoint? Absolutely. And believe me, I'll be testing those over the coming weeks. 216 people and 8 Americans have summited Everest without supplemental oxygen. It's going to be 10 times harder than it was last year. So I will be pushing those limits. And there's limits on what our body can do for sure. However, attitude matters, positivity matters. To me, failure is the building block for success. Like the fuel to get up the mountain. And I didn't take, they gave me Viagra, right, to improve my circulation. But, I didn't take any other drugs, right? It was just like I was inspired to get up there by the failure of getting HAPE. So I think failure is an absolute blessing.
I love how they use Viagra to help people get high
Hmm.
in
And
altitude.
yes, and again, in case you're curious, that's the first time I'd taken Viagra, and there was, there I wasn't going up the mountain with a heart on, right? There was no side effect that in case because I didn't know what the heck was going to happen. I was kind of nervous about it. And they were like, "No, you'll be good," and they were right. There was nothing else there that happened.
I think this little clip is going to be the best highlight reel I've had of any episode. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So you obviously showed an insane amount of grit, getting sick, coming back down to base camp, getting better, and then willing yourself, back up to get healthier and to get back up the mountain. Where does grit become a liability? And like, how do you know when to draw the line?
From an athletic standpoint, Steve, like I've blacked out a couple times cold water swimming, right? I've also blacked out in mountaineering. Like I have the unique ability to like push myself past the limit of safety. But at the end of the day, I don't actually view it as being a challenge because every time that's happened, I have survived it. I have come back stronger and I've come back much more inspired. And it goes on a personal level as well. I got married after I got off Everest last year. We got pregnant and we lost our child. Child had a Down syndrome diagnosis. And then when you get Down syndrome diagnosis, there's a much higher chance of like a miscarriage or an induced pregnancy. So we lost the baby at like week 14 of of pregnancy.
I'm so
Very
sorry.
challenging.
I knew you got married, so congratulations again on that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know about the baby. Wow.
Well, topic for a different time, but that marriage is over as well. But the point is, losing the baby only inspires me to like get it right. Like now I'm like I was inspired to be a dad before. Now I'm like 10 times as inspired to be a dad, right? So like when the setbacks come, it just you double down, you triple down, you quadruple down. It's fuel. So I don't view the grit as being a liability. What I view it as is when you focus on something, there's an opportunity cost for the things that you're not doing, right? But as your sphere of focus, as your sphere of influence gets, smaller, you really drive significant results. And then your sphere of influence actually gets bigger thereafter. So I'm a huge proponent of focus. And you have to realize that as much as we want to, we can't do everything in life. However, we can be like Elon Musk and do a ton of stuff as well if you can get enough of that under the umbrella of focus, right? So you might think that not quitting, being super focused, is problematic, but that to me is where the best successes come.
Oh, please do. Unfortunately, it looks like Reid lost his internet connection while at Everest Base Camp. These things definitely do happen. We wish him the best of luck and Godspeed as he attempts his second summit of Everest, this time with no supplemental oxygen. He is posting daily updates on Instagram, so you can follow him at Reid Tileston. I'll put that information in the show notes. You can also go to grititdone.com for more information about his book, and I'll post his LinkedIn profile as well for anybody that wants to reach out to him. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Built to Finish podcast. If you've enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. It helps me get great guests onto the show, and we'll talk to you next time. Until then, take care. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Accresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.